Wealth, security, and opportunity are a byproduct of success. However, it often comes at the expense of deep personal satisfaction and happiness. This is the Design Your Destiny podcast, and I am your host, Penny Chason, board-certified hypnotist and #1 international best-selling author. I work with the highly successful influencers, business leaders, corporate leaders who desire a life by design. In this podcast, I will bring to you succinct solo episodes and interviews that dissect the challenges of success and highlights the ways to leverage your most underutilized asset, your subconscious mind. If you desire peace and happiness in your life, better health, and stronger relationships so you can enjoy the success that you have created, keep listening because this podcast is for you. Shame. Do you have to live with it? Is it an emotion? I'm here to share with you how shame is a self-imposed prison and how to unravel shame and set yourself free from it. Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of Design Your Destiny. And shame is something that has been coming up a lot lately. I notice that I tend to see themes in my work, and I have some ideas around that. Back in my healthcare days, we used to joke around and say that things came in threes. For example, you would rarely ever see a certain type of surgery or procedure that was needed, and if one ever rolled through the door, you're like, okay, there's two more coming. It just seemed to be the way things happened. But I think we can say that, yes, expectations is part of it, but it's not all. But I really want to dive into shame because shame is one of those things that we tend to tuck away inside of ourselves. It is a hidden aspect that we don't like to share. And it takes a lot to come to a place where you love and accept yourself enough that you're willing to talk about the shame that you feel, to acknowledge it, to talk about it, and to look for ways to work through it. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about my with shame. And I don't mean my personal experience with shame. I mean my experience of working with clients with shame. So for many years, I almost exclusively, did age regression and forgiveness type hypnosis techniques with my clients. And there were a lot of patterns that I saw emerge. And over time, as I grew as a hypnotist, as my experience grew, I brought in other techniques. And now I rarely ever use regression. It's a go-to and it's the right tool in certain situations, but it's not the right tool in all situations. In order for that regression work and that subconscious forgiveness work, and I'm just going to throw a caveat in here that forgiveness, in the way that I talk about forgiveness, is not forgive and forget. That's not forgiveness. That's forgetting. And forgetting is not intelligent when we've learned lessons from our past. But a core component of being able to do effective, lasting regression type work is to have a solid understanding of emotions and what those emotions are telling us. Not only what those emotions are telling us, but if those emotions are based on an accurate perception. Tell me, have you ever been in a situation where someone sent you an email or someone said something to you and you had an immediate reaction, and then you go back later and you're like, gosh, like, why did I say that? Or why did I respond? You didn't really respond, you reacted. Why did I react that way? Because when I look back now, I can see that this person's intention was not to make me feel that way, or I assumed, right? Those types of emotions where we react like that they're typically not based on accurate perception. We address emotions differently, whether they're based on accurate perception or inaccurate perception. Any emotion based on an inaccurate perception is a completely unnecessary emotion. Any emotion that is based on an accurate perception, if we properly and adequately satisfy that need, because that's what an emotion is, it's telling us that we're out of vibrational alignment with who we truly are and how it is most aligned and optimum for us to operate. That's what an emotion does. If we properly satisfy, that emotion will be fairly quickly resolved. Okay. With the exception of grief. Grief is a different story. And I'm actually thinking about doing an episode around grief in the future. If you would love an episode around grief, comment whether you're watching this on my Facebook page, on YouTube. Comment, let me know you would like that episode about grief. Even ask a question that you may have, and I will talk about it from an emotional aspect, not how to resolve it, but from an emotional aspect, because there's a natural process we have to go through. Shame is not an emotion. Okay. We get into these places where something happens in our life and we look back and we have regret, or we feel like we should have done better, we could have done better, that maybe we did do something we didn't intend to do and we hurt someone, or we lost something important. So we have that guilt, right? We can have sadness. We can have a situation where, like, oh my God, I'm going to end up alone because I did this. Anytime that we have a situation that causes any of these other emotions, fear, guilt, sadness, alone, and then we have the thought, I should have known better, I should have done that differently. Shame comes from shoulding all over ourselves. Shame comes from, with hindsight, criticizing ourselves for not having that knowledge in advance, or just for making a bad choice. Sometimes we have the information and we make a choice and it's the incorrect choice. And we go back and say, oh, you know what? I knew better. I shouldn't have done that. That happens to all of us, right? It's one thing to reflect and say, okay, I knew I should have done something different. How do I avoid doing this in the future? Now, if you did something where you actually did something and you wronged someone, apologize, right? Make it right. That is how you resolve that emotion. You go make it right. But sometimes if we have past experiences around the guilt, the fear, the not good enough, the not lovable enough, I'm going to be left behind, left alone, no one's going to want to be around me. If we have old stories like that, then what can happen is we can freeze in that moment. We can bury our head in the sand, and then we don't take care of that guilt in the moment. And what creates shame, again, is what we think about that situation, what we tell ourselves about that situation. It comes from our expectations of ourselves and whether or not we meet those expectations. In a nutshell, shame is nothing more than harsh self-judgment. That's all it is. If you're ready to break that cycle of shame in your life, even if it's just a little bit of shame, right? It doesn't have to be a lot of shame. It can be a little bit of shame. Then there are some things that you can do. But I want to share with you a story about how shame can really impact us. I knew someone who was very successful in their career and profession. And within their career, they had made a misstep. And they knew when they did it that they were walking the lines of ethics. However, They were doing what they were doing in the ultimate best interest of what was involved. So the intent was good. However, the question of whether or not that ethics line was crossed came to light. And obviously, the powers that be had to take a look at that and see, was this ethical boundary crossed? And this person was feeling an intense amount of shame, so much so it was paralyzing them in their business. It was creating anxiety. They were having difficulty moving forward because their emotional state was in the dumpster, right? Shame is a dumpster fire of an emotional state. It's one of the lowest vibrations we can have. And most people associate emotions with vibration, and that's true. What makes shame that lowest of vibrations is because it is a pig pile of emotions. It is a pig pile of the fear, the sadness, the not good enough, not being accepted. Am I going to end up being alone? It is all of those emotions, and it just sucks us right down because we get in a spiral. So this person and I, we had done some hypnosis work in the past, and they reached out to me and they said, look, I'm having this shame. Can you help me? Can you help me work through it? And I'm like, absolutely, let's do this. So we did a little bit of parts work. And through that process of targeting that one specific emotion, the source of the shame, as a child, this person had done something and did not know the potential consequences. Nothing bad happened, okay? Let's frame this up. Nothing bad happened. Just like every other child on the planet, we don't always know the consequences or the potential consequences of our actions. And so this person had done something just for fun to see what would happen, and nothing bad happened. However, the family came down like a ton of bricks. You should be ashamed. You could have killed the dog, right? And this person loved their pet, absolutely loved their pet. And in that moment of being told that they should be ashamed and that they could have killed their pet, there was an intense emotional reaction there because they had done wrong. They made a wrong choice. See the connection? The present day shame had nothing to do with the dog, but had everything to do with this intense attachment of shame to having made the wrong decision. So here they were again. They had made a decision, could have made a better, and everything turned out fine. Everything turned out perfectly okay. But in the mind, all of these different thoughts, all of these different self-judgments were wrapped up in a scenario where I made a decision and I didn't fully consider the consequences. And that's what can happen. So when you experience shame, what you want to do, I'm going to give you 3 tips here. When you experience shame, what specifically do I feel ashamed about? When you understand that, you follow that in with, what specific beliefs do I have about this, right? What are the stories and the beliefs I have around this? So take, for example, the story I just shared with you. What specifically is causing me to feel shame? I made a bad decision and I should have known better. So then the next question is, what are the stories I have around making a wrong decision? What do I believe will happen because I made a wrong decision? And then that is going to give you a next level, right? It could be things like, I may hurt someone. That's guilt, right? I may lose my license to practice medicine. Oh, that's fear. That's insecurity. I may be judged by my physician peers. They may think I'm a horrible person. Oh, there's acceptance. I'm going to end up being alone. I may lose the respect of my patients, right? There's another one. Now, just to be 100% full transparency, this person was not a physician. That is an example that I'm giving you. But you can see how once you have all of these different emotions lined up, you can address those emotions separately. You do not have to live with shame. Shame is self-imposed. We created ourselves. Yes, I felt shame in the past. And then recognizing that it's something that we do to ourselves that is so liberating and it is so freeing. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Design Your Destiny, because when you approach your emotions, your feelings in these situations with a little bit of intelligence in terms of emotional intelligence, like having knowledge of how to impact these things and shift your life, it really opens things up for you, because we're here as humans. We are here to experience emotions. We're spiritual beings, and we're like, hey, I want to come into this human form and I want to experience this wide range of emotions. The key is, let's not get stuck in them. When we recognize they're there, let's assess what they are so that we can move out of them and get back into that state of gratitude, that state of contentment, that state of peace that allows us to move through life and to make choices that continue to move us forward in life, that allow us to experience all of life and not be in fear-based responses, not be caught up in sadness and aloneness, because one, we're never alone. And we have the ultimate power to create a very fulfilling life. It's all in our hands. It's just a matter of understanding what is going on and to not put perfectionist expectations on ourselves. So anyway, I will see you next week. If you enjoyed this, please, if you're over on YouTube, like, subscribe. If you feel inclined to leave a review on iTunes, I would love that. If you found this episode especially impactful, screenshot it, share it to Instagram, and tag me at penny.chason, because I know that I have never met anyone who at some point in their life didn't experience shame. And you don't have to live with it at all. I just gave you the keys to set yourself free from shame. I'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening to this episode of Design Your Destiny. I would love to know what resonated most with you. So just take a screenshot of this episode, share it over on your Instagram stories, and tag me at penny.chason and let me know what you thought. Also, if you head over to iTunes and you leave a positive review, it helps this podcast to help reach even more people, making a difference, elevating humanity and mankind.